It started with a bark. Not the usual chaotic symphony of yaps and howls that filled the county animal shelter, but a single, concussive sound that made the concrete floor vibrate. Every head in the lobby turned. Every volunteer froze, their hands hovering over water bowls and leash hooks. The sound wasn't just loud. It was desperate, a raw, guttural cry that sliced through the air and struck a chord of pure, primal urgency in everyone who heard it. No one understood what was happening, but they all knew it was directed at the man who had just wheeled himself through the front door. What was it about this quiet, broken man that had triggered such a violent reaction from their most difficult resident? Stay till the end, because this incredible story of a paralyzed veteran and a so-called aggressive dog will leave you absolutely speechless. What was about to be revealed would change not only their lives, but the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The man was Sergeant Frank Miller, a man whose courage was etched into the deep lines on his face and whose sacrifice was evident in the stillness of his legs. The chair he commanded moved with a quiet hum, a stark contrast to the thunderous echoes of his past. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, scanned the rows of hopeful faces behind the chain-link doors. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just a flicker of companionship, a quiet soul to sit with him in the long, silent afternoons. He had been told that a pet could help with the loneliness, help with the ghosts. But then came that bark. It ripped through the shelter again, a sound of such focused intensity that it felt personal. A young volunteer named Chloe rushed over, her face pale with concern. "Sir, I'm so sorry. That's Rex. He's a difficult case. We keep him in the back." Frank's gaze followed the direction of the sound, down a long, sterile corridor to the isolation kennels. The barking was relentless now, a frantic, rhythmic pounding of sound against steel. It wasn't the angry, territorial barking of a guard dog. This was something else entirely. It sounded like a plea, like a warning, like a name being screamed by someone who had lost their voice. "A difficult case?" Frank asked, his own voice raspy from disuse. "He was a police K-9, Chloe explained, wringing her hands. "Washed out. Deemed too aggressive for service after an incident. He's been adopted out twice and returned both times. He doesn't trust anyone." Frank wheeled himself forward, an invisible string pulling him toward the sound. The protests of the staff were a muted buzz in his ears, drowned out by the dog's desperate calls. As he drew closer, the barking changed. The frantic edge softened into a deep, guttural whine, a sound of profound recognition and unbearable pain. Through the bars, Frank saw him, a magnificent German shepherd, his sable coat scarred and matted in places. His body was a coiled spring of tension, muscles trembling under his skin. But it was his eyes that captured Frank. They were amber, intelligent, and locked on him with an intensity that felt like a physical blow. The dog wasn't looking at him. He was looking into him, as if searching for a memory lost in the wreckage of a man. The shelter director, a pragmatic woman named Sarah, stepped in front of the kennel, blocking Frank's view. "Sergeant Miller, I really must insist. Rex is unpredictable. We have a strict policy for a reason, for your own safety." But Frank couldn't look away. He felt a strange vibration in his chest, a phantom echo of the dog's frantic energy. A flicker of an image, hot and dusty, flashed behind his eyes, the smell of smoke, the taste of grit, a feeling of immense pressure. It was gone as quickly as it came, leaving him dizzy and disoriented. "He knows me," Frank whispered, the words surprising even himself. Sarah gave him a pitying look. "Sir, many of our animals are desperate for a connection. He's just reacting to your presence. Please, let's go look at some of the calmer dogs. We have a lovely Labrador mix who would be perfect for you." But Frank didn't move. He and the dog, Rex, were locked in a silent, desperate conversation that no one else could hear. Rex pressed his powerful body against the metal door, his whining escalating, his tail giving a single, tentative thump against the concrete. It wasn't aggression. Frank knew that in his bones. He'd seen enough aggression in his life to recognize it in all its forms. This was different. This was grief. This was a soldier trying to report for duty. He returned the next day, And the day after that. Each time, the routine was the same. He would wheel himself down the long corridor, past the curious and concerned glances of the staff, and park himself in front of Rex's enclosure. He wouldn't speak. He would just sit and watch and listen. The frantic barking had stopped after that first day. Now, as soon as Frank's wheels whispered down the hall, Rex would rise to his feet and begin a low, continuous whine. He would pace the length of his small prison, his amber eyes never leaving Frank's face. He'd press his wet nose through the chain links, sniffing the air, his entire being consumed with the man in the chair. For Frank, these visits became an anchor in the turbulent sea of his new life. The world saw a broken soldier, a man confined and defined by his injuries. But in the presence of this dog, he felt a stirring of the man he used to be. The dog's intensity mirrored the fire that had once burned inside him, a fire he thought had been extinguished forever in a blast of sand and shrapnel. He started having dreams. Not the usual night terrors of the ambush, the ones that left him drenched in sweat and gasping for air. These were different. They were fragmented, hazy, the sound of helicopter blades, the oppressive heat of a foreign sun, the weight of his gear, and a constant, reassuring presence at his side. A warm, furry body pressed against his leg during long patrols. A wet nose nudging his hand for comfort. The soft panting of a loyal partner who watched his back while he slept. He couldn't see a face, human or canine, but he could feel the bond, a connection so profound it felt more real than his waking life. Meanwhile, Sarah, the shelter director, was growing more concerned. "Frank," she said one afternoon, her voice gentle but firm. "I admire your persistence, but this isn't healthy. For you or for him. You're giving him false hope." "It's not false hope," Frank replied, his gaze fixed on Rex, who was now lying down, his head resting on his paws, facing Frank, as if standing guard. "He has a bite history, Frank. The last family that returned him, their son tried to take a toy from him. Rex didn't break the skin, but he snapped. He gave a warning, a serious one. We've had trainers work with him. They all say the same thing. He's suffering from severe PTSD. He's unpredictable. He's a liability." She took a deep breath, the words catching in her throat. "We're a no-kill shelter, but we have to be realistic. We can't warehouse a dog that is a danger to the public indefinitely. He has one more week. If we can't find a specialized, experienced foster home by Friday, we'll have to make a difficult decision." The words hit Frank like a physical blow. Euthanasia. They were going to kill this dog. This soldier. A wave of cold fury, an emotion he hadn't felt in years, washed over him. He looked at Rex, at the proud set of his head, the unwavering loyalty in his eyes. This animal had more honor and integrity in his scarred body than most people Frank knew. "He's not a liability," Frank said, his voice shaking with a sudden, fierce protectiveness. "He's a hero." Sarah's expression softened with sadness. "I know you want to believe that, Frank. I truly do. But we have to deal with the facts." That night, the dream was clearer than ever before. He was on his last tour. Afghanistan. The sun was a merciless hammer in the sky. He was leading a patrol through a dusty, abandoned village. And next to him, trotting with a quiet confidence, was a German shepherd. His partner. His friend. His dog's name was, it was right on the tip of his tongue, a ghost of a word. The dog's official designation was MWD, K91, but Frank called him something else. A name just for them. The dream shifted. An IED. A deafening roar that swallowed the world. Blinding light, then suffocating darkness. The taste of blood and dirt. The crushing weight of a collapsed wall pinning his lower body. He remembered the pain, a white-hot agony that consumed his consciousness. He remembered giving up. He remembered closing his eyes, ready for the end. But something wouldn't let him go. A frantic digging. Paws tearing at the rubble. A hot, wet tongue on his face, cleaning the dust from his eyes, grounding him. And a bark. A deep, desperate, commanding bark, again and again and again. A beacon in the darkness, calling for help. It was the same bark. The exact same bark he had heard in the shelter. From the narrator's perspective, we see what Frank's traumatized mind has locked away. The dog was named Aries. He was a military working dog, bonded to Sergeant Frank Miller with a loyalty that transcended training. In the chaos of that explosion, Aries had been wounded himself, shrapnel tearing into his flank. but he ignored his own pain. For 2 hours, he dug relentlessly, refusing to leave his handler's side. When the rescue team finally arrived, guided by his ceaseless barking, they had to physically pull the bleeding dog away from Frank's body. They were medevaced out on the same helicopter. Frank was in a coma. Aries was treated for his injuries. But in the bureaucratic chaos of a war zone, their paths diverged. Frank was flown to Germany, then back to the States, his file marked with a severe brain injury and amnesia surrounding the traumatic event. Aries, his military career over due to his own injuries and the psychological trauma of losing his handler, was sent back through a different channel. He was processed out of the military, mislabeled as a police K-9, and funneled into the civilian shelter system. His aggression was nothing of the sort. It was the hypervigilance of a soldier still on duty. The snap over the toy wasn't about possession. It was about resource guarding, a behavior drilled into him to protect vital equipment in the field. His distrust of strangers was the caution of a warrior trained to see threats everywhere. He wasn't broken. He was grieving. He was lost. He was a soldier separated from his unit, forever searching for his commanding officer. Until the day that officer, a ghost from his past, wheeled himself through the shelter doors. Friday arrived like a death sentence. The air in the shelter was heavy with unspoken dread. Frank arrived early, his face set with a grim determination he hadn't felt since he wore a uniform. He wheeled himself down the corridor to Rex's kennel. The dog was lying down, his head on his paws, but his body was rigid with anxiety, as if he knew what day it was. Frank looked at Sarah, who was standing nearby, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of pity and resolve. "Let me in there with him," Frank said. Sarah's eyes widened. "Absolutely not. Frank, I cannot allow that. It's against every rule we have. It's too dangerous." "He won't hurt me," Frank insisted, his voice low and urgent. "You said he needs an experienced handler. Well, you're looking at him. We've been through hell together. He's not trying to hurt me. He's trying to remind me." "Remind you of what?" Sarah asked, her voice softening. "Frank, there's no record of you ever serving with a K-9 unit. The records are wrong." Frank's voice cracked. "Or incomplete. My memory, it's not all there. But he knows. Look at him, Sarah. Just look at him. Does that look like an aggressive dog to you?" Sarah looked. Rex wasn't growling or baring his teeth. He was whining softly, his amber eyes filled with a desperate, heartbreaking plea, fixed solely on Frank. He looked like a man watching his last hope walk away. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. Every instinct, every rulebook, screamed no. But her heart, the very reason she did this job, told her something extraordinary was happening. She saw the unwavering trust in the veteran's eyes and the desperate hope in the dog's. She made a decision, one that could cost her job. "Okay," she whispered, pulling a key from her pocket. "But 2 handlers are coming in with you. And at the first sign of trouble, you get out." "Agreed." Frank nodded, his heart pounding against his ribs. The click of the lock on the kennel door was deafeningly loud. The handlers, 2 large men armed with catch poles, stood by, their faces tense. The heavy gate swung inward with a metallic groan. For a moment, everything was still. The entire shelter seemed to be holding its breath. Rex rose slowly to his feet. He didn't rush forward. He didn't bark. He moved with a deliberate, almost solemn grace. He walked towards the wheelchair, his claws clicking softly on the concrete. He stopped just in front of Frank, his body trembling. He lowered his magnificent head and gently, so gently, nudged Frank's unfeeling legs with his wet nose. He sniffed them, a long, deep inhale, as if breathing in a memory. Then, he did something that shattered the tension into a million pieces. He licked Frank's hand, a single, soft swipe of his tongue. He then looked up, straight into Frank's eyes, and let out a soft, mournful cry, a sound of reunion and release. He rested his head on Frank's lap, on the legs that could no longer carry him, and closed his eyes, a great, shuddering sigh escaping his body. He was home. And in that single, profound moment of contact, the final wall in Frank's mind crumbled. The dream became a memory. The heat, the dust, the explosion, the crushing weight, the searing pain. And this dog, this face, this warmth, licking his face, nudging him, barking for help. "Aries," Frank whispered, the name flowing from his lips like a prayer. "Your name is Aries." At the sound of his true name, the dog's eyes shot open. His tail began to thump a frantic, joyful rhythm against the side of the wheelchair. He whimpered, licking the tears that were now streaming freely down Frank's face. "It was you," Frank sobbed, his hand burying itself in the thick fur of Aries' neck. "It was you all along. You saved my life. You pulled me out. I remember now. Oh God, I remember. I'm so sorry I forgot you." The two handlers stood frozen, their catch poles hanging uselessly at their sides. Sarah was openly weeping, her hand covering her mouth in disbelief. They weren't watching an aggressive dog and a disabled man. They were witnessing the reunion of two soldiers, two survivors, two halves of a single soul, finally finding each other after being lost in the fog of war. The entire staff, drawn by the silence, stood in the doorway, their faces a mixture of shock, awe, and profound, heartbreaking joy. The aggressive police dog wasn't aggressive at all. He was a war hero, desperately trying to reconnect with the man he had saved, the only way he knew how. There was no question of adoption. It was a restoration. The paperwork was a formality. Frank and Aries left the shelter that same day, not as a man and his new pet, but as two veterans, finally reunited, ready to face the long, quiet peace they had both earned. In the months that followed, the transformation in both of them was nothing short of miraculous. The ghosts that haunted Frank's nights began to recede, replaced by the warm, steady breathing of the dog sleeping at the foot of his bed. Aries, no longer confined and misunderstood, lost the tense, anxious edge he carried in the shelter. His aggression melted away, revealing the gentle, loyal, and profoundly intelligent soul he had always been. They spent their days in the park, Frank throwing a ball with a special launcher, Aries retrieving it with a joy that was infectious. They were a familiar sight in their small town, the quiet man in the wheelchair and his magnificent, devoted shadow. They had saved each other in the dust of Afghanistan, and now, in the quiet green of home, they were saving each other all over again. Their story is a powerful reminder that the deepest wounds are not always the ones we can see, and the truest heroes often go unrecognized. It teaches us to look beyond the labels, aggressive, broken, difficult, and to see the soul within. It's a testament to a bond forged in fire, a loyalty that never wavered, and the simple, profound truth that sometimes, coming home isn't about a place. It's about finding the one being in the world who remembers who you really are. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us of the best in all of us.